My name is Karen Hall. I'm the Program Director for Ecological Education.
I'm Frederick Livingston. I'm an education coordinator at our Corvallis office. I focus mostly on the violet and sagebrush programs, but I also teach in juvenile detention.
I'm Annie Lamas, Ecological Education Coordinator located in Corvallis.
My name is Ari Saliba, and I am an Ecological Education Coordinator at the Institute for Applied Ecology. I'm based out of the Corvallis, Oregon office.
My name is Allison Singer, and I'm the Regional Project Manager of the Sagebrush in Prisons project in Idaho and Eastern Oregon.
My name is Riley Leisinger, and I coordinate the Sagebrush in Prisons program at Warner Creek Correctional Facility, located in Lakeview, Oregon.
And I'm your host, Sierra Dawson. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Seeds for Change. You can probably tell that today's episode is already shaping up to be something a little bit different than what you've heard recently on the Seeds for Change podcast. In today's episode, we're exploring the world of the Ecological Education program here at the Institute for Applied Ecology. And all of those stunning voices that you just heard at the top are members of the Ecological Education team. Out of the many programs we have here at IAE, I really think the Ecological Education program is unique. EE, as we call it for short, has a mission of improving the lives of incarcerated adults through ecological education and conservation. This means that a lot of the work that staff of the EE program do is actually done in a prison setting, which for a lot of folks is probably a novel concept. So with all that being said, because EE is such a unique program, I felt like doing a single interview with one single staff member, as I've been doing here on the Seeds for Change podcast. It felt like we were going to be missing out on so much rich perspective. And so I got to thinking, how do I best represent a program that has been so distinguished in what it does? How do I incorporate multiple people from the program? And bingo, I had a light bulb moment, and this episode idea was born. Today we're doing a Voices From styled podcast, where you will hear from the 6 staff members you heard at the top, who again are Frederick Livingston, Annie Lamas, Ari Saliba, Allison Singer, Riley Leisinger, and Program Director Karen Hall. I came up with a list of 5 questions for each staff member to answer that explains the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why of their work. Everyone had such fascinating answers, and I was truly so excited to put this episode together. But before we get to the interview questions, I want to circle back to Karen to give more background on one of the biggest projects that EE works on, which is the Sagebrush in Prisons program.
We started the program in 2014 at the Snake River Correctional Institute in Oregon. There was a student who had seen similar work in Washington, approached Tom Kay, and suggested that we could grow sagebrush in a carceral setting with the help of imprisoned crews. The inspiration for that, I think, came from the Sustainabilities in Prisons program that is a blend of Evergreen University, the Washington Department of Corrections, and of course, Sustainability in Prisons. They do work in all prisons in Washington, and they have sustainability that includes conservation, but much more too. Our program was situated within the Eco Ed department at IAE because of the emphasis on education. Today, we're in 12 prisons in 6 states, counting our Southwest office. And so we're in California, in Idaho, Oregon, Nevada, Wyoming, and New Mexico. The bulk of our work is centered on improving the lives of incarcerated adults through ecological education and conservation actions, like raising plants or butterflies in support of or restoration of native habitats. Our largest impact is the Sagebrush in Prisons program. Incarcerated crews raise about 500,000 sagebrush plants annually. But I want to walk you through a little of how that works so you get a sense of what a season is like. In late winter, we typically send out a job notice in the prisons where we work, and we conduct interviews. From there, we might hire 4 or 20 crew members. It really depends on the growing capacity of the prison. One of our staff members, an Eco Ed staff member, will work directly with our partners like BLM and the Department of Environmental Quality in Wyoming to identify ecologically appropriate seed, to get soil, to get supplies delivered, to get all of it organized, and they'll set the schedule for the upcoming growing season. As crew members are hired and they begin work, that is paired with more formal lessons on things like sagebrush typicology, birds of a sagebrush typicology, reptiles, soils, to more informal lessons or even ad hoc lessons on things like water and fertilizing and everything. As the season begins, the work starts when cones are packed with soil, and then the seed is sown, and then seeds are watered, and as they begin to germinate, thinning happens, fertilizing happens, and then later troubleshooting of diseases or other environmental lessons takes place too. The season ends when the sagebrush plugs are around 8 inches of top growth. That's usually in September. They're unpacked out of the cones and placed in boxes, and then they're picked up by our partners to be driven to areas where they will be planted for rehabilitation, for restoration of habitat. So by the end of the season, you've got crews that have experienced all of this, that have been through lessons formal and informal. They've learned a whole lot about the ecology where they're located, and they have a really good idea of what it takes to manage a crop of this size.
Honestly, kudos to that student that approached Tom Kay about creating this program in the first place. We owe you a lot. Now that we have the background on the largest program that EE has, my first question for the staff members was aimed at getting to know their personal why for the work that they do. Specifically, the question I asked was, what motivates you to work with adults in custody, which we will be referring to as AICs for short? And what have you learned so far? And here is what they had to say.
I started this position without having previously worked in prisons, and I was a little cautious at first because I wasn't sure how our program would fit into the larger carceral system, and I knew that I wasn't interested in just helping prisons boost their green image or just taking advantage of low-cost labor. But as I grew in the role, I did start to find ways to locate our programs within the larger context of abolition, and I think this is still a very challenging environment to work in, especially when you're growing finicky native plants. But I do see how our programs create these spaces where people can feel, safer than they would in the chaos of the prison environment and feel more connected to something larger than themselves. And if we can grow these spaces sort of from the inside out, especially in collaboration with other allied organizations, we could really transform what prison looks like, and we could really change our society's response to harm. I don't see this as a 5-year goal, but in the long term, if we plant the right seeds now, then maybe the next prison won't be built. Or maybe when a prison is going to close down, what replaces it is not simply more of the same.
Working in a correctional facility is not something that I ever envisioned or thought about as a career path for me. But going into my second year in the position, I have truly never worked with a group of people who are so thirsty for knowledge and excited about the work that they're doing to support conservation efforts. And bringing conservation into a carceral setting really opens the door for our participants to feel like they're making an impact, not only on the environment, but also in their own lives and recovery. They have so much passion for the work that they're doing, and it's really inspiring to watch them become stewards of the environment in an environment such as theirs. And I really think that this, combined with the healing that a lot of them have experienced and expressed that they've received while in the program, really motivates me to continue working with adults in custody and other underserved populations. I've gotten quite a bit of training in this position, including DOC-mandated radio and key training, non-escalation and de-escalation training, and trauma-informed teaching tools, just to name a few, all of which have given me a really wide array of skills and knowledge to do my job effectively. But I have to say that I've learned the most from our participants themselves. I've learned each person I've worked with is courageous and curious, hardworking, passionate, very motivated, adaptable, and genuinely interested in being a part of something bigger than themselves.
One thing I really enjoy about working with adults in custody is knowing I get to help them build connections with the natural world. I really enjoy working with this population because they truly enjoy every lesson we do and everything we have to teach them. They have such limited access to the outdoors, yet they are individuals that could benefit from it the most. Many of them comment on how healing and calming it is to be able to work with the environment and to be able to focus their time on something outside of themselves, especially nature and the natural world. Helping them connect with nature is what motivates me to continue doing this work, and I've learned a ton from working with them. We have Taylor's checker spot larva rearing lab at the facility I work at, as I mentioned earlier, which is backed by U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And the women I work with in this facility are highly skilled lepidopterists who take their work quite seriously. Their dedication is reflected in the work that they do, and you can really see that when you're there standing next to them. Some of them have been working in the lab as a lepidopterist for 7 years, which is really impressive. And you can tell that they're really skilled and they know exactly what they're doing, and they take great pride in their work. This upcoming year, they will be at 10,000 larvae reared in the lab, which is an incredible step forward in helping this endangered species survive.
I'm motivated to work with adults in custody because I feel everyone in this world can benefit from learning about our environment and learning new skills. And I hope that I can help give them more of a purpose in their current environment, help them to have confidence in themselves by learning new skills, and hopefully give them more hope for the future. I've learned a ton about myself, and I learn every day from the folks I work with at the prisons. I've learned that I can do more than I thought I could do, that these challenges have just made me stronger, learning to deal with the uncomfortableness and anxiety that comes along with working inside a prison. And it removes barriers and maybe some preconceived ideas of what people that are incarcerated are like. I've learned that I really enjoy teaching, regardless of whether it's a child or an adult, someone who is a citizen, professional, or someone that's incarcerated. And I've learned that those people that are incarcerated are not very different from you and I.
Motivation in this job comes with ease. I am not only playing a part in sagebrush step restoration, I get to share this process with adults in custody who are eager to learn. We are called the Sagebrush Crew, but this program goes beyond the sagebrush we grow, and even beyond the sagebrush step. My mission is to provide plants to our partners for restoration, of course. The other part of our mission is outreach to prison audiences, not limited to only AISDs, but also to include the Department of Corrections staff.
What's my motivation? I came from a very small town in southern Appalachia, and yet I've had chances that a lot of friends did not. Throughout my career, I've worked with under-resourced or underserved populations. For me, it's a kind of a payback for the chances that I have had. But also, I have a family member who is a convicted felon. And though he was lucky enough not to serve time, I've certainly seen the impact of that conviction on his career and his life. The other motivation that I have is really about connecting people deeply with nature. I was raised close to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. I spent a lot of time out in nature as a child, and I know what that connection has brought me. And so I have always wanted to share it with more people because I recognize its value.
I love drawing connections between what people say in order to build mutual understanding. And so, did you hear some connections in their answers? Because I did. I couldn't help but notice the honesty and passion leap out of their responses while reviewing these recordings. Frederick and Annie shared a mutual perspective that they never even saw themselves doing this type of work in the first place. But once they got settled into their role and grew and saw how things worked, they shared a motivation to help adults in custody feel connected to something bigger than themselves. This was also echoed by Ari and Allison, who added that there is a sense of refuge in the work that they do for AICs. Words like healing and safety and hope and inspiring came out multiple times across all of these answers. Riley and Karen also highlighted the theme of reciprocity in their motivations as well. Riley mentioned that the mission of the program is dual-sided because it not only benefits the partners of the program, but it also benefits the adults in custody. Karen views it as an opportunity to give back to others for opportunities that she's had in life that others haven't. So overall, I'm hearing a sense of excitement and mutualism from all of the answers to this question. The next question I asked the EE staff got at their personal definitions of the term ecological education. I wanted to know what that concept meant to them as an individual and how it appears in the context of the work that they do in the prison settings. One of the named challenges of working with adults in custody in an educational setting is that it's not guaranteed that every single participant has received the same level of education. Therefore, I also wanted to ask how they addressed accessibility in their lessons. And here are their responses.
I think of ecology as paying attention to our home, and I think of education as the pursuit of freedom through knowledge. And you put those two together, and basically my goal is to guide students towards like a richer understanding of the place that they live. And this is fundamental to realizing who we are and where we can go on an individual level, but also on the sort of macroclimactic level. This is really how we heal relationships between humans and an earth in danger. And almost every time I start a lesson at the juvenile detention centers, and often even in adult facilities, I feel the students pull back, and I can tell most of them have probably had pretty negative experiences in formal public education before, and so they sort of automatically put up this wall between themselves and me as an authority figure to protect themselves against maybe the shame, or the frustration, the isolation they might have experienced in education previously. But I also know that everyone has an innate curiosity that is excited by discovery and learning. And my first task is to speak directly to that curiosity and kind of find a way around that wall. And often what this looks like is sharing something that I'm personally really excited about, that I just learned that I can't wait to share with them, or bringing in some material that they would never have access to otherwise because they're some of the most excluded from the natural world. And by bringing that in, you can really change the energy in the room pretty quickly, with a plant or a beaver pelt or, a stream table. There's a lot of things you can bring in that really change what education looks like in that space.
Ecological education to me means giving people the knowledge and skills to be stewards of the environment through hands-on learning and teachable moments, and I think it should be accessible to anybody and everybody. It helps people to understand their environment and has the power to motivate them to make changes in their daily lives and also inspire others to do the same, whether that's on a small or large scale, like reducing your water usage or eating less meat or whatever it may be. I've seen this while working with the crews across all of our sites and throughout our various programs that we have. Some participants that are close to being released say that they want to plant sagebrush with their daughters and teach them the importance of native plants, or start a sagebrush farm on their property. Other participants have expressed that after working with plants that support endangered butterflies, they're inspired to take their grandkids to the coast and say, look, this is the habitat that I helped restore. This is the species that I was helping. Some of the women in the Taylor's Checker Spot Butterfly Lab want to pursue higher education in a science field and even become lepidopterists. The power of education can go an extremely long way for anyone, and especially for our participants who oftentimes find immense joy learning about pollinators or talking about human impacts to natural systems.
To me, ecological education means providing education that helps people connect with the natural world around them. In prisons, there's very little contact with the outdoors, really in any capacity, which I feel just deeply hurts the human spirit. And when working with the crews in prisons, I think ecological education is a way to invite nature inside to the folks who really could benefit from it. Some ways we've made science and botany more accessible to our crews is to do lessons where we physically bring in things like ferns, bones, fossils, pressed flowers, and we'll do a lesson that might explore those items or explore animal adaptations in depth. And we usually will end a lesson with something a little more fun, like a game. And these are just a few examples of how we might make nature available to the people we work with.
Ecological education means helping people to see why humans and nature are interdependent and why we need both to be happy and survive, and that everything is connected. And we can't live on the planet without appreciating nature and understanding, even in a simple way, why it's important and how it works. Ecological education is part of work every day for us. Every step involved in growing the plants is related to an element in nature or process in nature. And so it inherently is learned by growing sagebrush or other native plants. And in addition, we have scheduled formal lessons to talk about in more depth things like wildlife and birds and art and science, geology and natural conservation areas and why they're important, and so many things. It's easy to make science and botany accessible with the crews because we're doing it every day. We're out there dealing with the natural environment, with the sun exposure, with wind, with climate, things associated with the climate, with moisture and humidity and seed germination and pests eating the seeds, and everything is out there for us to see and observe, and it just naturally connects with what we're talking about and what we're doing.
Education is the root of the work we do. We get to teach the crews how to raise a sagebrush seedling to mature into a plug fit to survive in the wild, simultaneously conducting workshops for the crew that explain and navigate the science of sagebrush step restoration. That is, causes, effects, feedback loops, sustainable agriculture, greater sage grouse and other dependent species. The list goes on and on. Systems thinking is a reoccurring topic at Warner Creek Correctional Facility, and therefore education goes beyond the sagebrush step. Education within a prison can be tricky, with heavy restrictions on classroom items and in the secure perimeter, to delivering a lesson that everyone can absorb, no matter what level of education has been acquired.
How do you make science and botany accessible to the people that you work with? It's strangely not as big a challenge as you might think. I find incarcerated crew members are insatiable when it comes to learning about science and learning about the natural world. They see it, they want to know about it. So, we can be in the middle of thinning a crop and then somebody finds a frog. And all of a sudden, this is a wonderful lesson on amphibians and the role that amphibians play in the natural world. Or the work stops because we see a ferruginous hawk above. Well, how do you know that's a ferruginous hawk? And what in the heck is it doing out here? So it stops our lessons to observe nature and to talk about nature. And oh, by the way, how do birds fly? How is that accomplished? And do you know what primary feather is versus one that is located on the tail? And what's the function of all these feathers? So there's all sorts of ways to make science and botany too, of course, accessible in the moment at the time you see things. That's very valuable.
What I appreciate most about these responses is that, from the observer's perspective, much of EE's work with their planting crews in prison encourages natural curiosity. I appreciate that they not only deliver lessons verbally, but physically as well. Like Frederick's example of bringing in a beaver pelt, and Ari's example of bringing in ferns and pressed flowers and bones. I also admire Allison and Karen's responses because they reveal that EE welcomes nature's spontaneity into their lessons. They conduct them outdoors, and if there is an animal that piques someone's interest, we stop and we talk about it. All of these answers really illuminated their participants' curiosity and their eagerness to engage with the natural world. The second to last question I had for EE staff was aimed at sharing stories from the adults in custody themselves. I wanted to know, from their perspective, what impacts they've seen their work make on the people they work with. And I specifically added an option to share a little story or a quote from a participant. So here's what they had to say.
I led one lesson at juvenile detention where the students were supposed to work together to manage the shared resource that was a pond, which is really just a bowl with some paper fish in it. And they had to negotiate how much to take out. And one of the students who had been very vocal about advocating for moderation, saying we shouldn't take too much, he was caught when it was his turn cheating and taking a few extra fish for his own little village. And the students, when they discovered this, got so animated by the injustice, and they started becoming so active that when the supervisor came in, he told them all to sit down and be quiet, or they'd be kicked out of the classroom. And it occurred to me that he had never seen students that were animated because they were engaged with the material. He had only experienced classrooms where students were vocal because they were resisting what was happening. They were acting out. And that made me really see how I was bringing more than just the content of the lesson itself, but also the sort of physical experience of being excited about learning, which may have been new to some of those students. And with the adult crews, we often get people saying that our nurseries are kind of a refuge from the chaotic prison environment. People really appreciate being given an opportunity to create a positive impact. And one woman from my crew told me that our programs have completely changed the direction of her life, and now she wants to become an environmental educator when she releases next month. Another example that comes to mind during an end-of-season celebration, one guy said that just eating ice cream with his friends made him feel human. And it really highlighted to me how rare that feeling can be in prison and how important our work is to bring that. I feel really clear that providing a contrast with a dehumanizing environment is not far enough, but at the very least we can affirm that possibility. And that people who are often assumed to be broken can still be seen as fully human and still have something to contribute.
I work mainly in a medium security women's facility, meaning I work with people who are serving sentences longer than 4 years or who will remain incarcerated for the rest of their lives. Many of the women on my crew have expressed that they want to be in the program for the entirety of their stay because it brings them so much joy and meaning. Throughout my time in this position, I've watched the participants become more talkative, more thoughtful, curious, and really motivated in the work that they are doing. At our certificate ceremony earlier this year, where we recognize the work all of our participants have done throughout the year, we bring in outside food and drinks. We give them a certificate of achievement that lists various skills and knowledge they've gained over the course of the season. And this year, we gave each participant a personalized letter, thanking them for their accomplishments and contributions to conservation efforts. One member on my crew was even brought to tears recalling the letter afterwards, saying that she had never received anything like it before, expressing her sincere thanks and gratitude for the program and what it has meant to her.
Some of the impacts we've seen on the people that we work with is that they'll start just generally becoming more curious. They ask really brilliant questions, and they'll be making connections to things using examples from our lessons. Other impacts we've had is we've seen many of our crew members want to go back to school. We also have another crew member who just got accepted into a PhD program. So those are a few of the impacts our work has on people, which we love to see, especially diving deeper into a field that we've helped nourish.
I've seen and heard great impacts on the crews that we work with. Many times at the end of the season, people will come up to me and want to give me a big hug and are in tears because of their gratitude towards their opportunity to be outside of the prison walls, to have fresh air, to be able to see and hear the birds. At the end of the season, we have the crews fill out an evaluation form of what they thought about the program. And one quote from one of the crew members I've worked with said this: "This program was a godsend to me. I absolutely enjoyed every part of this project. It gave me a sense of purpose and direction and hope for the future. I learned that I am still valuable and capable, that I can lead and inspire others and still make a difference, even while in prison.
The education that is available for the Sagebrush crews has an incredible impact that compounds the work we achieve. It's exciting to see the crew members apply what they learn through their work and conversation weeks after a given lesson. Earlier this year, I conducted interviews to build our Sagebrush crew for the new season. During interviews with AICs, every individual that I interviewed pointed out that the Sagebrush job is the only job in the facility that truly gives back to the people and to the land the people have used. This is profound in a sense that SPP's mission is outreach and education for AICs through sagebrush steppe habitat restoration.
Every time I work with crews directly, I come away recognizing the value of the work that we do through their eyes. They express that to us in lots of forms, verbally when we're there, but certainly also when we ask for their input at the end of the season. We get some amazing writings about the value that the program has to the lives of incarcerated individuals. For many, it represents one space where they can be and be themselves. It represents a space where they can actually have a little bit of an autonomy, where not everything is scripted for them, but they can make some choice and have some choice in their life. I hear the word peace come up a lot in talking with them. I hear the word connection come up too. So there's a sense that they are connected to something outside of themselves, bigger than themselves. And that's very meaningful.
Wow. Those testimonies really speak volumes. And I can only imagine that it must feel amazing as staff to get that kind of feedback from the people you work with. The final question I asked these members of the EE team is an outward-facing one. I wanted to know what they think the general public should know about the work they do. As mentioned throughout this episode, there can be some misconceptions about what working with people incarcerated in prison settings looks like. So, if you're on the outside like me and you're wondering about what this type of work looks like, you have questions, here's what the staff wants you to know.
I guess I'd want people to think about prisons, like where they are, what they look like, who goes in, who doesn't. Prisons have become increasingly industrialized over recent decades, and this is largely because there's not as much public attention to them as there could be. There are many organizations like ours coming at these problems from different angles, but they aren't really being supported at the national level to the extent that they could be. And in parallel to this, there are whole landscapes and species that are disappearing because not enough attention is being given to them. And we get questions all the time from people in our programs and from the public, why we grow sagebrush when it's literally all you can see for miles at some of our sites, or why you put so much energy into saving just a few hundred butterflies. But when people feel connected and whole, and when we see ourselves as part of a larger community and ecosystem, I think the shared benefit is more obvious. And the standard that we are willing to accept for the most marginalized humans or non-humans, it really determines what we are capable of demanding for all of our institutions. Because a culture that doesn't value butterflies can't also value a healthy future for our planet, because you can't separate those two. And in both cases, we're starting at the edges, because that is where the work is urgent and where people and species are being left behind.
I think it's important for people to know that out of the 75 plus participants that we work with in our various programs, every single one of them wants to be there. Each member on the crew is given an opportunity to learn and grow in this program and is encouraged to be curious and give their ideas about how things can be done more efficiently and what topics they would like to learn about throughout the season. And I think the common misconception that people have when they hear the word prison, or when I tell people that I work in a prison, is that it's forced labor, or they do it for free, or we're exploiting them. And I really want people to know that these programs are not that in the slightest. They have to apply to be on our crews. They go through an interview process. They are given a letter of hire, and they receive training as any person would who is applying for a job on the outside. And I really encourage people to check out our website and take a look at the most recent issue of our Sagebrush in Prisons newsletter, where we invited crew members to include artwork or poetry or quotes, just thoughts that they had about the season and about the program in general. And you can read and see the impact and the passion that our participants have for the program and how it transcends more than just they're here for a job, they're only here for a short time. They really truly care about the work that they're doing, and it's really impactful to see that and work with them.
It's really great to be able to create a space for folks to let their curiosities out, engage in wonder, and to be able to find marvel in many of the items that we generally take for granted.
I think it's really important that the outside world, those of people that are not involved at IAE or our ecological education team, or those people that maybe don't know anything about conservation at all or don't even know this program exists, is that this work is so impactful in so many ways. And it not only directly positively impacts the crews that grow the plants that are in these programs, but it also spreads to a wider audience as they tell their friends and family what they're doing and express how it's helping them or makes them feel. It also impacts the prison staff that observe what we're doing and how we're working with the crews in a positive way. It directly positively impacts the community. It impacts the environment, of course. The program started to help with restoration of the sagebrush steppe ecosystem and the hundreds of species, including the greater sage grouse, that benefit from these restoration projects. And it's rewarding to us, the people that are doing it. I feel very lucky to have the opportunity to be involved with such a unique program. And we desperately need more funding to do this and do it well in more places.
Something I believe people should know about the work we do in the Ecological Education Department revolves around the misconception of how we operate in the prison system. I have spoken to people before about the work EE conducts in prisons, and more often than not, it is believed that our role is solely education and lessons in a classroom setting. The work we do is not limited to a classroom. In fact, it goes beyond the prison itself. For example, at the end of the season, depending on partners and the locality of our planting areas, the AICs might have the chance to plant the sagebrush plugs they spent all summer growing.
What do I think people should know about the work that we do? Well, I think in working with incarcerated populations, I always think about what the value of nature is to them and their wider lives. And I think through teaching about nature, about ecology, conservation biology, we're actually helping them become more resilient, more adaptable in their personal lives, which I truly believe will lead to a better life after legal release. You know, we can provide tools for them to help them understand the importance of flexibility in thinking. We can support their thoughts around self-organizing. I've often seen them become self-organized around packing in ways that is much better than anything we could have designed. We can help them learn about how important knowledge is and constant learning. We can potentially also give them feedback about their own ways that they think about things, think about the world. We can provide new models of thinking about the world, because you can't break out of how you think until you potentially see another way to think. Now, we can, through the work we do, provide some of that. We can give them a little bit of agency in their lives that have pretty much no agency right now. And if we can achieve these things, then we are providing their ability to become more adaptive in the face of trauma, in the face of events that are going to happen to them once they exit prisons. And so I really believe the value of this work is in reformation in many ways. And as important as it is to reform and to restore habitats, it's equally important to do the same for human and social constructs. So I really think this work is intimately tied to conservation from the human perspective.
Well, there you have it. There is the 4th episode of Seeds for Change, the voices from the Ecological Education program. I want to extend a huge thank you to all of the 6 staff members that participated in this episode. And there are more staff members that work on the Ecological Education team that you did not hear from. So if you want to hear more from these individuals, let us know. If you have more questions or you want to read more about the Ecological Education program as a whole or the Sagebrush and Prisons project specifically, you can always go to our website, appliedeco.org, click on the Education tab, and scroll down and you can read all about the program and the projects, and you can read the newsletter, the most recent newsletter that Annie mentioned. And a little bit of a sad announcement. This is the last Seeds for Change podcast episode that I myself will be hosting. It has been a lot of fun to sit down with staff from the Institute for Applied Ecology and get to learn more and share more about the work that we do. It has been an honor, and I am so happy to have been a part of this project. And if you have enjoyed listening to my voice as a host, I do have my own environmental podcast that you are free to listen to and follow. It is called Speak Environment. You can find it wherever you get podcasts, wherever you're listening to this one. Just go ahead and search it by Sierra Dawson and I should come up. So if you want to stick around with me, go head over there and I'll talk to you there. But without further ado, thank you so much for listening. Seeds for Change will probably be on a little bit of a hiatus while we switch and transition to the next host. And until then, we'll see you next time.